We help three businesses get access to over $1 million worth of business funding. In this video, I want to share with you the lessons that I observed from working with these business owners so that you can replicate this process into your own business. Now, this is broken down into two separate processes. You have the pre-funding process, and then you have the post-funding process. Timing is going to be crucial. Here's why. I see a lot of people when they're trying to get access to business capital, they think that they are just going to blindly apply for things in hopes to get approved, or they can just apply for things whenever they see fit, or they can just apply for something because they got a pre approval letter in the mail from a bank or a credit union or some type of lender. And they think, oh, well, if they sent me this, then I must be good to go. But that couldn't be further from the truth. And so timing is going to work in a couple of different fronts. I'm going to give you three. There's more than three, but I'm going to give you three main ones that at least helped these business owners secure over that 1 mil in capital. The first is going to be understanding your seasonality. Like, what does that mean? That means that depending on the type of business that you run, each business, each industry is going to have its own fluctuations. So you're going to have a high time, meaning this is when the industry is the busiest. So if you are in an industry where maybe the back half of the year is the busiest, so I'll give you an example, e-commerce, typically they make 90% of their revenue in Q4. So that goes from the back half of October all the way through December. But then the rest of the year, for the most part, it's cyclical. It's just kind of like up and down. But if you don't understand the seasonality of your business, then you could be applying for capital during a low time, meaning the likelihood of you actually getting approved for the line of credit, whether it's a BLOC or a business, even something as simple as a business credit card, believe it or not, is going to be drastically different. And so you want to time it so that it actually lines up again with your line of work, which is why being mindful of the type of industry selection that you pick is crucial. This is why I'm not a fan of just because I see something that's online that's hot right now, that's a loophole, or I can actually just finish having a conversation with a private clients about this, is if you set a business up with a hack or with a kind of like a quick fix, then you're going to have to fix it again at scale. So you might as well set it up the right way from the jump, or you might as well set it up the right way if you're an existing business so that as your business continues to grow and as you start to layer on more capital, you don't have to constantly have to fix it. The second type of timing that you want to focus on, though, is the maturity of the account. Here's what that means. Every account is going to have its own, essentially, a maturity phase, and it's going to have its own strength to it. And so, depending on how much cash, how much revenue you're running through that account over a specific amount of time, that's going to tell the bank everything that they need to know about the strength of your business and also the seasonality of your business, which is that first component that we just finished breaking down in terms of timing. This piece is important because if you have a business, there's essentially three different things that'll make or three different levers that'll make a funding sequence work for you or possibly against you. And that's going to be your cash flow, your credit, or your collateral. Now, typically, if you have the cash flow and you have the credit, you don't have to worry about putting collateral. But if you don't have the credit and you don't have the cash, then obviously you're going to be at the mercy of having to put up collateral. So one of the biggest levers that you can pull on to ensure you get access to additional capital at scale, whether you have an LLC, a corporation, a multi-member, or even a single member, is running cash through your accounts over at least 90 days before even going into a funding round. We call them funding rounds, which is essentially the timeline of which you're going to apply for business capital. Now, is that a hard rule? No, absolutely not. I mean, we've had clients come in where we help them get access to capital within 30 days. Now, that again, it's not always the case because every business is in a different place and going through a different phase, whether they're building, whether they're holding, whether they are in a stabilization phase or a stabilizing phase. But having cash consistently roll through the account that you're ultimately going to go back in and ask for capital for is a good habit to get in because it ends up building the trust with that banking institution. And then it also de-risks your file, in this case, your business, from it looking like a business that's about to go into default. It's kind of like landing a plane. The bigger the plane, the bigger the landing strip you're going to need to land it. And so the longer you can withhold that ask, the better it's going to be for you in the long run. Again, this is going to be case by case, but I'm giving you based off of experience working with these business owners that have acquired over 1 million in funding. This is how they're able to get access to this type of capital at scale. It's not by accident, it's not by luck, it's strategic. The second piece to making this work during the pre-funding process is going to be the funding selection. Here's why. If you're just going into this blindly and you're just thinking, I'm just going to apply for whatever I think I can get access for. I saw this thing on YouTube, I saw this thing on Instagram. That looks like a pretty cool product to have, but you don't really know if it's going to suit you. You haven't actually done the groundwork to building out that partnership with that financial institution, and you actually haven't structured your business in a way that's going to be congruent for that type of capital that you want. Because let's be real, not all funding products are designed for every type of business. It's kind of like picking a different weapon if you're about to go into battle. You may not need an army Swiss knife. You may need a full-blown, machine blaster. I don't want to get censored on this video, but you see where I'm going with it, right? You may not need an entire atomic bomb. You may just need a landmine, like whatever that is. The way that this works in the business credit landscape is you may not need a business credit card. You may need a business line of credit. You may not need a business line of credit. You may need a business term loan. And so all of those are going to serve its own purposes as you're moving into different parts of your business for what you're needing, whether it's payroll, whether you are going into real estate acquisition, whether you're going into business acquisition. Like, let's be real, like you're not going to buy a business with a business credit card. And so if you're just thinking that you're going to stack your way into 0% capital in hopes of buying a business, it doesn't work that way. And even if you tried to liquidate yourself out of it later on, you're going to get chewed up by the fees. And then the way that banks are tightening up with liquidation as a whole, you actually could end up causing yourself to get blacklisted from the bank. So it's a lose-lose situation. The third piece to the pre-funding component that these business owners were able to take advantage of to, again, secure that 1 milli in capital is the ownership structure. Now, depending on if you're watching this, if you are a single member LLC, this may not apply to you. But if you are a multi-member LLC, or if you have a corporation and you have more than one person on that, like as an owner, then this is like, listen up. I want you, like, your full attention on this. Depending on how well structured your personal profile is, as one of the business owners, is going to be a direct reflection of the amount of capital that you're going to get access to, all things being equal with how the business is structured. What that means is if you have a business owner and let's say they're 80% owner, but their credit profile is like a 620 and all their information is jacked up on the personal credit profile. They have a bunch of different addresses on there. They have a couple of collections and they've been late on some payments. They have like 2 credit cards to their name. Even if the business is crushing it, the odds of them being able to not just get access to capital, but scale capital is slim to none. Versus if you had a business, and we'll flip that for a minute, you have 80% ownership and that business owner's personal credit profile, so we call that an owner profile, is sharp. So they have under, let's say, 10% utilization. They have over 10 different revolving accounts on that profile. They have 2 different mortgages. They have 1 student loan that they've been paying off on time over the last 5 years. And collectively, they have over $60,000 in worth of personal credit lines. The bank is going to favor that profile with them leading the front as the head business owner versus it having it flipped the other way. So a common thing that we tend to see whenever we have a business structure with multiple owners, whenever we're consulting them on this, is who has kind of like the edge that we can see. And by the way, it's not just based off of credit profile, who also has, from the personal perspective, if we're going to go into a financial institution, who also already has the leading relationships with those financial institutions. That could be a bank or a credit union. That's going to shave off a couple of months of you having to wait to build those relationships versus just starting from scratch. And so we like to look at operating agreements, which is one of the things that we help our clients audit all the time. And we're constantly helping them readjust and kind of like shift the weight on ownership. And again, you also want to make sure that this doesn't hurt you if you're trying to do this thing on your own with a tax implication, which is why if you're going to do this, hire a professional to help you do it. By the way, if you need our help taking a look at this, we can gladly take a look at where you're at, where you're looking to go, and put a system in place that helps you get access to funding at scale. But you don't just want to blindly do this and then you end up setting yourself for failure in a potential exit later on down the road if your plan is to sell the company, or if you have a tax implication just because you flipped a couple things on the operating agreement and you gave the wrong person ownership. That's on the pre-funding side. Now let's move over into the post-funding side. This piece is important because getting access to capital is one thing. And this is where I'm going to start it off. But number one is the way that you allocate that capital is a completely different ballgame, and that's a skill. Spending money the right way is a skill. And so, one of the things that I've noticed with business owners that are able to grow their capital that we work with is once they get access to capital, they know exactly where it's going. Like they are not wasting time. They have been thinking about where that 100K is going, where that 500 is going, where that 250 is going, heck, where that seven doesn't matter if it's going into real estate. They know where it's going. They know what to do with it. It doesn't matter if it's going into information technology, IT. They know exactly where it's going to go, whether it's to hire a better team, whether it's to build infrastructure, whether it's for better programs, whatever that is. I say this because this is going to be a direct reflection of the way that you allocate that capital and the way that that capital gets redistributed back into the business, i.e., revenue. That's going to paint a completely different story to the financial institution that decided to partner with you and give you access to funds. They're going to say, oh, this was actually a good investment. We're so glad that we partnered with this business because they know what the heck they're doing. Versus you go through all this beautiful work, you get access to 100K in capital, and then you go out and you don't know where it's going. You go out and you blow it. You go out and you put it on a campaign, or you go out and you put it into the next hire and it ends up flopping. And then now you have this lingering debt of weight that the business now has to carry. And then the bank or the financial institution is not looking at you like, yeah, I don't think that we, gave the best business access to the capital that they needed. This is where you start to see limits get slashed. This is where you start to see people randomly report on Reddit posts or in these groups say, hey, my account randomly got closed, or I went from having a 50K limit to a 20K limit. What gives? It was because the capital was misproperly managed. The second thing that I've noticed that these business owners did post funding, and by the way, we help them with all of this, but this is one thing that I do want to shed some light on. I want to spend some time here. They readjusted their business credit profile. We took a look at all the capital that we got access to, regardless of the type of business product or business funding product that it was. And then we made sure that that was given into account and given a direct reflection on the business credit profile. And so we want to see, are the products that we're getting access to, are they actually reporting to the business credit profiles? We're going to get a point there. Are the amounts reporting on the business credit profiles? We're gonna get a point there. And are the business credit ratings and the business credit scores reflecting now that we've been using this capital over the last 30 days, over the last 60 days, over the last 90 days? This piece is important to measure. And again, we do this with our clients day in, day out because we understand the importance of this actually reported, because it can make or break them getting access to that next layer of capital. Because getting access to 150, 200, that's not hard. It's when you start going into that 250, 350, 500, 750 range where things like you got to have a real well-oiled machine in order for you to scale the capital that you have, again, under one specific entity. And so that's why we make sure that all the business credit profiles are lined up. And by the way, it's not just Dun & Bradstreet. In most instances, Dun & Bradstreet isn't even going to report this. And so we want to take a look at not just Dun & Bradstreet, but you want to take a look at Experian. You want to take a look at Equifax. You want to take a look at your SPFE. You want to take a look at your Moody's credit report. And it all has to be telling the same story. So as you continue to grow, you're able to get access to capital predictably and sustainably, which is what we help our clients do. And we absolutely love it. Now, the third and final piece to the post-funding process is the following. And it brings everything together because it kind of works as a flywheel. And so as they're allocating the capital, as they're making sure the debt, the capital is being properly reported so that it kind of works again as a flywheel, what kicks this into the next funding strategy or the next funding round as they go in for additional capital is that they're already planning their next funding round with us. And so that means that we're already taking a look at the next funding product selections that we're going to get access to. By the way, this again continues to change as you scale because you may not have access to the funding options that you had in that first, second, or even third round. So on the fourth round is going to look totally different. You may not necessarily be able to go back in to that credit union or to that financial institution because you've essentially tapped that out. And so you have what's known as a what they call a limit exposure or a lending exposure, which means that you've tapped out the limit. So if the lending exposure per LLC is 150, then if you already have 150, then guess what? You can't just go back in and ask for another 150 unless you open up another entity and then you restart the process. So that would actually slow you down. And so in this case, if you wanted to scale the capital that you had for the same entity, what we would do is we would take a look at different funding options inside of different ponds. And so I use this analogy a lot, but I want to drive the point home with it, which is if you're just putting your fishing rod inside of the same pond, don't get surprised if you're going to catch the same fish. And so you have to not change out the rod, aka your business, put your rod in a different pond, meaning banking institution, different sources, different options, so that you can now catch new fish, aka you can now get access to an entire plethora of different funding options that you wouldn't have otherwise had access to in that first, second, third, or even fourth round worth of business capital. Now, if you're wondering, does $1 million worth of funding actually happen in one round, two rounds? The way that I've typically seen it, it happens between multiple rounds. And the cadence on that is usually 60 to 90 day cadences, which means every 60 to 90 days, we're going back in and we're re-strategizing with our clients on the new funding products, the new funding options that we're going to help them get access to so that they can continue to scale the capital predictably and sustainably, but more importantly, in a way that doesn't get them what we call kind of like shut down. So if you try to do it too quickly, you actually end up getting your limit slashed. If you wait too long and you don't know how to disperse or how to allocate the capital, then you actually also end up getting your limit slashed because it looks like your business doesn't actually need the capital that it originally got. So all that to say, timing is of the essence. Timing is going to be important, which is why I wanted to open up with the pre-funding process so that you can tie that into your own business, and then the post-funding process so that you can see how this all connects, blends together, and it works as a nice flywheel.